Okay, so you have made your brandy, you've allowed it to ferment, and now you want to age it. Well, let's get into that. Okay, so hello and welcome back to another Beaver DIY day. As promised, part 2 of the brandy run, or the Brandewyn run. What we did is we did run the Brandewyn. It fermented out in about 5 days. We left it to clarify for another couple of days. But we'll check in with Past Beaver a bit later on just to see how we did the run to get to this result that we have in front of us. So the result is we ended up with 12 jars, 11 of which we are going to be tasting and judging whether they go into the cut or not. And then, of course, as always, jar number 1, which is our 4 shots and heads. Okay, on the previous video they asked on what percentage do I take my 4 shots and my heads off. So I try and compress my 4 shots and my heads, which we'll explain when we go on how we did the run. But I compress it. That's why you will see that on the majority of my runs there's a significant dip in ABV once I move out of my 4 shots of my heads into my hearts run. So for those that have asked, this one we took off at 85% ABV. Thereafter, jar 1 went to 60. We carried on with 60 in jar 2. Jar 3 was 55. 4 was 55. 6 was 53. 5 was 55. 6 was 53. 7 was 50, 8 was 40, 9 was 35, and 10 was 30, and 11 was 20. We would have had 11 jars, but unfortunately, as you'll see in the video that we'll be playing now, I knocked over 2 jars, losing roughly between 500 and 600 mils of high proof brandy. So yeah, our end result will be a little bit less, but at least we still have a run. So yeah, we're going to pop over to Past Beaver quickly. He's going to talk about the clarification and the transfer, and then after that we're going to pop over to Past Beaver or Past Future Beaver. He will explain how we set up the still and how we did the run to get the results. So let's pop over to him. Okay, so if you are following along with the brandy recipe or the Brandewyn recipe, and Future Beaver has just sent you back to Past Beaver to explain what step 2 is, welcome. So yeah, step 2 is where we are going to be transferring our brandy from our first fermentation into our second fermentation, or from primary to secondary, and adding our clarifying agent. Haven't even drank this morning and tongue's already tied. So yeah, all that we're going to do now is we're going to take the wash we have in here, or the mash, or the whatever you guys want to call it. We have it on this side. We need to transfer it over to this side here, and we are going to filter out as much of the sediment and solids as we can, to ensure that when we add the bentonite, we will have a nice clean liquid that we can transfer to our still, so we don't have any scorching or anything when we put it into the still. So yeah, the rule of thumb is the cleaner it goes in, the cleaner it comes out, the less chance of pukes, boil overs, and all that other funny stuff that you don't want when you run. So a little bit of precautions beforehand saves you a lot of hassle in the long run. So yeah, let's get into the transfer. Okay, so for the last little bit that's left over, this is the must at the bottom of the bucket now. It is filled with delicious juices and raisin bits and all that other stuff. So what I'm going to do with it is very similar to what the wine producers do, is they press the must to get every last little bit of juice out of it. So what I've done is I've taken my Viola cloth here, folded it a couple of times, and I'm going to just dump all of this in there and then wring it out to get as much of that flavor out of it as possible. So yeah, let's get into that. Okay, so and what you should be left with is just a pulpy mess on the inside of your bag. Don't worry about the yeast. Like I said, we left the sediment till the very last little bit so we can do a nice press with it. You can keep on pressing up until this stuff is completely dry, and you get more flavor out of them, because remember, brandy is all about the flavor. And yeah, very good investment is go down to your local linen shop or fabric store or whatever and ask them for Fiola. I think I'm mispronouncing it completely, but I will put the name in the description for you guys. So this comes in very handy for all your brewing, for all your distilling, to use as filters and that type of stuff. And yeah, it is very cheap, and you can use it as a brew in a bag, you can use it in your mash tun, whatever you want to use it for. It works fantastic. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to transfer it over into our bucket here and into our fermenter, and then it's time to add the bentonite. Okay, so with everything transferred and making a royal mess of it, what I need to do now is add my bentonite. So bentonite you can get at any health food shop or a Pick and Pay or something. Just check for it in the health food aisle. This one is the Nature Choice brand, or if you have a Dischem nearby, Dischem will also be able to help you out. So all you're going to do is you're going to take about 250 mils of water, a cup, and a tablespoon of your bentonite. So the water I'm using is slightly warm. It's not boiling hot, but it's slightly warm. This just makes the bentonite dissolve a bit easier. So we'll take a tablespoon of bentonite, add it in, and then now what we're going to do is we're going to shake it up and get the bentonite all dissolved into this here. Okay, so with the bentonite all dissolved, all I'm just going to do is I'm just going to open up my lid, make sure everything is dissolved in there, open up this lid here, and now I'm just going to pour in my bentonite like so. And then I'm just going to give it a quick stir. All I'm going to do is I'm going to place my thumb in my hole here so it doesn't spill out, and then just going to slosh it around for a little bit to get the bentonite all over the place. Okay, so with the bentonite all mixed in and all over, what's going to happen now, the bentonite is negatively charged and your liquid on the inside here is positively charged. So it's going to attract all the little bits and bobs that's floating around here. It's going to combine it, and you will see in the next couple of hours, you'll start seeing a clear head forming, and then that head will just slowly move down up until everything sits at the bottom. Cool. So because this is done fermenting, I am not going to put on an airlock. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bag, I'm going to sanitize it, and I'm going to put it over the lid here, push in a little bit, and just put my cap on. So just to seal it. Don't have to put my airlock back on here because it's done. There's no more CO2 going to be escaping, there's no more alcohol going to be produced. All I want to do now is I want this to clarify so it goes into the still nice and clean. Cool, thank you guys very much. And let's go back to Future Beaver. Let's get into step number 3 of your brandy run. Now, what we're going to do now is we need to transfer it and distill it. So as you will see in this little video down in the corner, you will see that the sediment has now dropped out. It took a day for the sediment to drop out and to clarify this brandy or Brandewyn that we want to now transfer. So what we're going to do now is we're going to transfer from our secondary fermentation or our carboy into our pot, and then we're going to start getting it up to temp. So let's get that transfer started. Okay, so we are done transferring it into our boiler now. So what we need to do now is turn on our elements or light your fire or whatever you do to get your thing up to temperature. I've got two 1.5 kilowatt elements that I'll be running. So I'll be turning on both at full tilt to get it up to temperature, and I'll leave the cap off up until it hits 55 degrees centigrade. Then I'll cap it. Okay, so let's quickly test the temperature. It has now been 20 minutes since I turned on both the elements, and I need to now just check the temperature and see if we are on 55 degrees so we can cap it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it one quick last stir. To make sure that the temperature is evenly distributed throughout the liquid. And then put your thermometer in there and just check the temperature of your wash. You're looking for between 50 and 55 degrees before you cap it. Okay, so we're straight on 55 degrees, 55.3. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cap our still. Okay, so if you're using a column still like mine or something similar to this, what I do is I feel the temperature rise up the column by just lightly putting your hand on the column. Just be careful, it does get hot really quickly. But yeah, so I just go up and I feel as the temperature hits just below my sight glass or 2/3 of the way up my column, what I'm going to do then is I am going to turn off the one element and turn the other element down to my distilling temperature or the distilling setting. That will allow the temperature to rise slowly and the fractions starting to happen within the still. Okay, so while we're waiting for the temperature to rise, I'm going to attach my hoses, and then what we're going to do is we're going to run a little bit of reflux in the beginning just to get our fractions in our column to become stable. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the reflux and just run it in a straight pot still mode. So the only packing that we have inside of our still is the stuff inside of our sight glass, which will be a piece of copper wire, a couple of ration rings, and then some goons or marbles that will allow us to have a little bit of reflux action. Okay, so now it has been about 20-25 minutes. I've just turned off the one element and I turned the other element way down to allow the temperature and the fractions, and when I talk about fractions I just mean the reflux action within the column, to get to a stage where everything is nice and balanced and the temperature up top there doesn't fluctuate as much as it would if you didn't allow it to balance out. Okay, so what you will see is that the first drips that come off, I always allow my first drips to run really slowly. And then if you check up at the top here for the reflux action, we can actually see that reflux. You see the lines and the drips coming down. That means that we have a condensation happening up top, and all that liquid is dropping back down again, stripping out the harmful chemicals and flavors and that type of stuff. So what we want to have is a good reflux action, a slow drip for the first 250 to 300 mils, depending on how much you want to take off. So what's going to happen is you're going to compress your foreshots and your heads. After that, what you're going to do is you're going to turn off the reflux, and then you can start taking off a little bit quicker, which I'll show you a bit later on when we change over to our first cut jar. So this is foreshots and heads, and we're going to take off 250 ml. That will be your methanol coming off, and as well as that foreshots that you don't want to put into your final product. So yeah, we're going to allow it to take off nice and slowly. It's going to take about 20-25 minutes once again for us to take off 250 ml. We have now collected our first 300 mils of our foreshots and heads. This is the kind of stream that you want. It's a little bit of a broken stream, about the thickness of a pencil lead that you want, and you want to keep it at that takeoff speed for the duration of the run. Time now to change over to our next jar, and start collecting our cuts. Okay, so after he spoke a hell of a lot, I'm pretty sure you have a better understanding of how to set up your still for a brandy run. I'll just repeat a very key point here is if you're doing a whiskey, a brandy, what else, a rum, any of those things where you're trying to pull as much flavor out of the wash as possible while maintaining a relatively high ABV, make sure you cap it at 80%. Anything over 80% when you're doing your run, you are going to be losing a lot of flavor. With this run, as you saw when I went through the ABVs, I try to keep my run at or as close as I can to 60 and 50%. So I try to keep that hard run in that ballpark between 60 and 50%. It is a hell of a lot of flavor that pulls through, still at a nice high ABV with not a lot of tails coming in, and that's why once you hit tails, you'll see that your drop off of your ABV once again starts going really quickly, and number two, your flavor starts changing drastically. In this run, I also went down to about 20%. The previous rum run, I went down to 28%, but yeah, I went down to 20% just to see if I can recoup some stuff to make up for the 2 last jars. But as they came off the still, I'm not 100% sure that I once again will be adding anything below 40% into the blend. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to quickly do a sniff and a taste test on all of these, and then we're going to do the blend and the aging. Okay, so on the tasting side and the smelling and that type of stuff, I found that jar number 9 on the 35 had some nice raisin, like the dried raisin smell on the nose, and then on the taste it also had the sweetness of the raisin, almost a dried fruit kind of flavor to it. What I'm thinking of doing is adding a little bit of this jar to get some of that flavors, but jar 10 and 11 will definitely not be going in here because there is a lot of tails in that and I don't like the flavor of that. If you like the flavor there, then go for it, add it. So I'm just going to add a half of that just to bring some of that sweet raisin flavor, like late harvest kind of wine flavor, into the brandy. I was also asked, why do I do so many small cuts? The reason is for me to taste and to understand what's going on within my run. So the next time I do it, I know if I want to change some stuff, maybe add a little bit reflux in the middle of the run or so on and so forth, depending on what I want to do to get the flavor that I want. And also, I was asked, why don't I do my hearts run in the center up until I get to about 40% on my parrot. Then I just do that cut and I collect all of that instead of wasting my time with all these small jars. Once again, I like the science of this flavor changing throughout the run. You do not have to do this. The other reason why I do it is I can catch my tails a lot sooner than running the risk of having tails pull in, because I've had runs where the tails came in at a high ABV. This is the way I do it. You don't have to do it like this. You can collect everything after you've taken your 4 shots and your heads off, and collect everything and use that. It's up to you. I just don't like doing it that way. Now what I want to do is just want to quickly get this all mixed up. Take a alcohol meter reading, see how much water I need to add to bring it to about 40-45%, and then we'll get into the aging process. Okay, so we're hovering between 40 and 45%, so rounding it down to about 43, exactly where we want it. So what we're going to do now is just get it into our bottles, and then I'll explain what I want to do for the aging. Okay, so let's just quickly give this a taste to see what kind of flavor we have for the final blend. On the nose, you get grape, you get some sweetness, you get a little bit of that funk from the tails from that one jar that I added, but not a lot. Like that when you open up a raisin bag, that kind of smell. And then on the taste, immediately you get that raisin sweetness from the tails hitting you, and then as you exhale, you get fresh grapes moving into the sweetness of a of like hard candy kind of sweetness. So what we want to do now is we want to age it. So I'm going with oak staves, and then I just love what the Karee did to the other two things, the rum as well as the whiskey. So I will be adding those ones in as well. So as for the Karee, all I'm going to do is just break them so they fit into the mason jars. And then this one little small jar here, just going to add a little bit in there as well. So I'm going to age this small jar with just the Karee and nothing else, just to test that flavor. This one I will be adding in some oak staves. So firstly, the oak staves, these ones were toasted at 220 degrees for an hour. So they will give some nice vanilla sweetness and that type of stuff into this. And then I will be charring 2 staves again. Those will stay in there for as long as it takes for them to get to flavor. So just to explain a little bit about the flavor that will come from the wood. This is the rum we made a couple of days ago. Now if you leave the rum on its own during the day, what will happen is during the day the heat will allow the alcohol to become thinner, and that will push it into the wood. Once it gets nice and cold out in the evenings, what will happen is the alcohol will contract and it will be pushed out of the wood again. And then that process will carry on over and over and over. And every time it does that, it sucks flavor out of the wood and it leaves some of the flavor inside of the wood. So you swap out some of those funky flavors for different flavors. So the vanillas and the caramels and that type of stuff comes out of the wood, and the other flavors stay inside of the wood. Some of that funky flavors that you don't normally want in your booze. This was forced aged. Now what forced aging is, you take that hot cold and you artificially do it. Meaning you're going to heat this up and then cool it down. Heat it up and cool it down. So the way I do it is I take a basin, I fill it with hot water, and then I put the jars inside, or the bottle inside of the hot water. And then leave it in there for about half an hour, take it out, put it in the freezer, allow it to become almost completely, it won't freeze because the alcohol is too high, but you will see it becomes like a thick syrupy liquid on the inside. Then you allow it to come to room temperature, put it into the hot water again for half an hour, put it into the fridge. And you do that for 5 days, as many times during the day as you possibly can. You will end up with something like this. So this is the rum that we did, and you can see it already has awesome color coming through to it. And if you smell it, a lot of that funky flavors of the original rum, that heavy banana and the molasses bitterness and that type of stuff has been stripped away. If you taste it, it becomes a nice rum. So a couple more days of cycling and this will be a ready to drink rum. So yeah, we will be doing exactly the same with these ones here. And as you will see, the red from this Karee is already being pulled out. So yeah, a couple of days and these ones will be ready to drink. Once again guys, thank you very much for joining me. As always, remember to like, comment and subscribe. If you have any questions regarding your Brandewyn, a recipe, advice, whatever, please down in the comments or pop me a mail. My mail will be somewhere on this video. If you have any questions on how to set up your still or run your still, please don't hesitate to ask. I am always willing to help. So yeah, have an awesome day and have a lekker week.